The Policy of Capitalist Monopolies. Part 2. The desire to produce the same homogeneous products in all enterprises. Products that differ greatly in individual qualities serve as a serious obstacle to eliminating competition. Therefore, the strengthening of cartelization is the concentration of production on mass products. Also, focusing on one product significantly reduces production costs and facilitates price adjustment. The most accessible to such limitation of individual enterprises to the production of one particular product is the chemical industry. Example: English Trust Calico Printers Association and Russian Prodomet. The main method of regulating the production of individual enterprises is to establish for each enterprise the share of its participation in the total production of the entire syndicate, in accordance with its possible technical productive capacity. The share of participation established for each enterprise means, on one hand, the right, and on the other, the obligation to supply to the syndicate, and the sum of all the shares allocated to the individual members of the syndicate means the total participation of the syndicate in production. Example: the Rhine-Westphalian Coal Syndicate distributed participation shares. The total amount of all participation shares is 79.7%. Companies: Gelsenkirchen 8.6, Garpen 7.2, Hibernia 5.4, German Luxembourg Society 3.6, Phoenix 3.1, Constantine the Great 2.2, Essen Society 1.9, Arenberg Society 1.8, Concordia 1.5. Reducing production is usually achieved by setting all enterprises a certain percentage by which production should be reduced. This percentage is the first decade of the existence of the Rhine-Westphalian Coal Syndicate. Attention to the screen. Due to this reduction, the participation shares changed accordingly. So, the amount of participation shares was in tons. Attention to the screen. Despite the regulation of participation shares and therefore all production by the syndicate, actual production did not always correspond to the established participation shares, being either higher or lower than them, so the actual production was in tons. Attention to the screen. Sales regulation. To reconcile the different interests of individual members of the syndicates, it is necessary to equalize the unequal quantities supplied by them at different times. This leveling can be done in 4 ways. Firstly, what was sold in a previous period of time in larger quantities can be sold in the future in smaller quantities, and vice versa. Secondly, the equalization can occur in kind, that is, the firm that sold too much must buy part of the products from the firm that sold too little, and, moreover, at the average selling price determined by the lagging firm. Thirdly, a company that is ahead of others in its sales can transfer its orders or customers to them. And fourthly, firms that have outpaced and realized, therefore, a certain surplus compared to other firms transfer it to the remaining firms. In the distribution of orders, the syndicate applies a number of measures aimed at equalizing the interests of individual participants or at reducing production costs and, consequently, increasing profits. Firstly, when distributing orders, it is usually taken into account to what extent a particular company has already approached the share of participation established for it. Secondly, transport costs play a big role in determining the companies to which orders are placed. Orders are usually transferred to the company that is closest to the place of delivery and for which transport costs will be the lowest. Thirdly, The availability of preparedness of firms to fulfill orders, for example, the existence of some parts of orders already in manufactured form in some enterprises. And fourthly, the special desire expressed by the customer also plays a role in the transfer of orders to one or another member of the syndicate. The regulation of profits is closely related to the regulation of prices. The difference between the basic price set by the syndicate and the selling price at which the products are sold is determined differently for each member of the syndicate, depending on the more or less favorable costs of production. This difference, which constitutes the profit of each individual company, fluctuates and constitutes the main condition causing inequality of interests and positions of individual members of the syndicate. The allocation of profits to the syndicate should therefore serve to equalize these interests. Each member of the syndicate contributes to the syndicate's cash desks the difference between the main price and the syndicate selling price. If the sale occurs within the established share of participation, then the contribution is limited to this difference. If there is an excess of sales compared to the production norm, then a premium is often set in a certain amount for each unit of overproduced product. The entire amount of profit received from individual members of the syndicate is divided among these latter, and in proportion to the norm established for each share of participation and not according to the number of sales of their products made by each participant. All of the cartelization techniques we have indicated depend on the relationship between the central sales office, syndicate, and the individual participants in the agreement. The character could be 1. The syndicate is only an intermediary between customers and individual companies. He only undertakes the transfer of the order, but all obligations are accepted and borne by each individual company. And 2. The syndicate acts as a representative of the entire agreement drawn up between the individual firms. In this case, all obligations can be borne either by the entire cartel as a whole or only by the sales office. The organization of the sales office itself can also be different. Firstly, its function can be assigned to one of the members of the syndicate, that is, to any specific company. Secondly, the role of sales office, intermediary, and representative of the cartel can be performed by some large bank or some trading institution or a cartel bank specially organized for this purpose. And finally, most often, the syndicate is organized in the form of a special joint stock company, the shareholders of which are representatives of individual companies or all shareholders of all enterprises included in the agreement. Summarizing all that has been said, it can be argued that the main objective of the cartel's policy towards their members is to equalize the position of the participants in all respects. The establishment by cartels of prices and production conditions that are the same for all, the desire to level out the height of production costs and the rate of profit, are only methods leading to the intended main goal, namely the possible complete elimination of the competition between participants after equalizing their interests. However, the cartel's desire to equalize the status of participants in all respects cannot be fully achieved. Ultimately, participants still have the opportunity, even in the highest form of cartelization, to independently regulate production costs and, as a result, extract different rates of profit from their enterprises.